And now for a session presented by American Express Travel. Please welcome the president of American Express Travel, Audrey Hendley, in discussion with Skift president, Carolyn Kremins.
It's so great to see your beautiful faces here in person, and if you're online next year in person, okay? Oh, I almost fell back in my chair. Great to see you, Audrey. I always love our chats. Let's just dive right in. So we are all traveling differently, right, than we have in the past, and American Express, you're moving cardholders around the world every day, millions of them. And from that, you have access to a tremendous amount of data, right? You get to see where they're going, how long they're going for, how much they're spending, what activities they're doing. So no one better to ask than you as to what are some of the emerging trends that you're seeing that we should know about for the next year ahead.
That's a big question. But good morning, everybody. Hi, everybody online. And thanks for having us at the conference today. We look forward to it every year. You're right, American Express has a lot of data. We have a lot of card members. So we like to get close in terms of understanding what people are doing. So like many of you, our travel has come back faster and stronger than what we anticipated. We've had many bumper months, if you will, this year already. You've probably read our earnings report where Steve, our CEO, talked about in April we lapped last year and some, and that has continued as the year has progressed. So that's good to see. We're also seeing a little bit of what we talked about last year too. People are traveling more intentional and being more purposeful in the travel they take. So they're trying to align, what they believe in what they're doing. And you have to believe that yourself, if that's your job, to make that happen for customers. So for me, like when I'm on travel, I'm going to the local schools, I'm going to those really small restaurants because I want to understand what's going on. And that's what our customers are doing too. But the new news also from last year is that we've now developed a lot of product to help customers to do that when they're on their trips.
Yeah, and I want to get into that in a little bit, but first I want to just ask, when you think about American Express cardholders, they're probably some of the most discerning travelers. They have high expectations. They want a flawless trip. Yet, like we've heard in some of the sessions earlier today, there's still so much disruption out there. There are flight cancellations, there's problems with labor and all of that. And yet, your customer wants a high-level trip. How do you manage that? Like, how can you deliver on your promise when there is so much that is really out of your control?
Change, I guess, is the word we've had in the last few years. But I guess for American Express, if I take a step back, we've been in the business for 170 years. We've been moving people around the world in all types of forms for lots of time. So there's a lot of change, and our customers expect change. Now, what we just had was not what they expected.
Right.
But for us on the product side and running the travel organization, we have to innovate, we have to stay ahead of the curve, because that's what customers have come to expect from the American Express brand. So we're doing lots of things. So to keep ahead of the game, obviously we're investing a tremendous amount in technology, in our people. Our website has a tremendous amount more functionality, because we have to modernize, we have to innovate, and we have to kind of stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, there's just so much that needs to be done now when you're planning a trip, especially now people are taking, right? Aren't you taking or trying to take your bucket list trips? I know I'm always like moving that one to the top because you want to make sure that you can and do it while you can. I just want to talk a little bit about the travel demographic, because it used to be like boomers, right? It was always about the boomers because they had the discretionary income, they had the time, but we're seeing at Skift that the Gen Z, the millennials, are really the ones who are starting to travel more even so than the boomers. So one, I'm just curious, are you seeing that? And then if you are, does that mean that American Express has to rethink what kind of products you're offering? Talk to us about that.
Well, first I'd say it seems that everybody likes to travel, particularly in the moment, because everybody has that list that you talked about, prioritizing and reprioritizing based on how things are going in the industry. But I will say when we look deep into the data, we do see millennials and Gen Zs indexing much higher in terms of taking trips at the moment. And it's not about just like knowing that they're doing that. You kind of have to get to know customers authentically. As we talked about earlier, customers now want to align philosophically their beliefs with the brands and the companies that they work with. So while they're an increasing demographic of traveling, we have to also make sure that we're relevant to those customers, not just in our travel product, but in our card products too. And you see that in some of the more recent innovations on Platinum Card and other things. But some of the products you mentioned, that you talked about it earlier too. So we're working with Kensington Tours, and we've put together some really nice ways to travel and experience the world that are particularly focused on millennials and Gen Zs. So we're going to Denmark, to Peru, Kenya, South America, Vietnam, with really nice curated itineraries. I'll talk about the Kenyan one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I'm ready.
Kenya
Let's
was
go.
my last big trip before the pandemic hit, and actually it was the first time I actually thought the pandemic was on the way, because we were doing temperature checks in small little airports that we weren't even doing in America at the time. Wow. But the trips that we've put together for Kenya, for example, are going to authentically understand conservation in Masai Mara. What does it really mean, and how do we really build that into the traveler's experience? If you're going to Denmark, for example, on one of the itineraries, you're going to stay in some really nice castles. That's not really what a Gen Zer is expecting when they're going on vacation. They might be thinking of a different hotel experience. So what we're trying to do is really understand what customers want and make sure that the product is relevant, because the most valuable thing that a customer gives us is their time and the trust in what we can do with their time. And they want to make sure that we're there to back them all the way. So it's everything from the technology and the experience up front right through to the destination, and obviously the getting home and the plan B and all the other things you need when you're on a trip.
Right. I'm ready to go. Let's go. To plan those trips, you need travel consultants, and I know that you have an awful lot of them there to serve the cardholders. But I was talking to someone on your team a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that you're doing like a massive boost in terms of hiring more consultants. And you got to think that in this time, it's so hard to find people, right, to work and come back into the travel business. So how does American Express go about hiring these consultants? Like, how are you recruiting? And then maybe more importantly, how are you retaining them, keeping them there?
Yes, we have done a lot of hiring. We have over 7,000 travel counselors around the world in 23 different countries. Obviously, the US is a big country for us. We service customers locally and across different market lines as well. And we've been hiring feverishly, as somebody told you. And it's everything from, like, if we start at the essence, the beginning is, let's make sure our brand value proposition is right for colleagues. Do I want to work there today and for the long term? What we're trying to do and what we've achieved is people are not just coming to work to answer the phone or to help people when they need help. People are coming to build a career at American Express. It's a big company, it's growing well, we've lots of lines of business that you can work in. Of course, I want everybody to stay in travel because I value their expertise, but it doesn't always go like that. So when we hire colleagues, we use all kinds of places like LinkedIn. We have some nice ads that attract people to our brand, but we get a lot of organic people coming to our brand too, primarily from existing colleagues suggesting that their friends should come here, which of course we all love because these are always the best type of colleagues to bring. And then we have a very focused plan of, much like when you're working with customers, the onboarding, pre-onboarding, onboarding, the early engagement, and then right through their career. And we hit the ground running in the first 90 days with some of those heavy investments in talent, in training, even in destination, and that goes through their entire career. We have colleagues who started on the phones, and they obviously become supervisors, but they move across the lines of business. They may move to work in training, development. They might become leaders of big call centers around the world, and there's lots of examples of that. Because when I come to work here, I want to make sure that I belong. So it's everything from activities around inclusivity and diversity, training, development, and authentically helping people to do what they want to do. Not what I think they should do, but what they think they want to do. Mentoring people, and I spend a lot of time with
Yeah.
colleagues across the organization, just helping them to figure out what they would like to do, because this
Yeah.
job is part of your career journey.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know Audrey, she's like an amazing mentor. I know some of the stuff that you've done. And if you're looking for a job, obviously, they're hiring. Anyway.
At all levels, in all functions.
There you go, okay. How many of you know that American Express actually has a historian? I didn't know that, but I did do some research. I Googled online and looked, and I saw the timeline of American Express, 170 years old, and they were innovating from back then. I mean, the late 1800s, they had the traveler's checks. Now, like when I was 20 years old, I went on my first international trip, and I was using traveler's checks. And no, I wasn't born in the late 1800s, okay? Just saying. But, so I'm just curious, like what is the 21st century equivalent of the traveler's check? Like what are those innovations?
So let me build on your traveler's checkpoint, because this is could be a very young audience. Traveler's checks were these things that your mother said, put it in your bag and don't let anyone touch it. And then you took those traveler's checks and you hoped that, merchant accepted them, or you went to an American Express office, with the Spanish steps in Rome and said, can I cash this in for some lira? And
I actually went to the bar and did that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, in our brand value, we wouldn't be top of the bar. But so that's kind of how it started, right? And what it looks like today, it's like, much like you've heard from some of the other speakers, it's a connected experience with the customer at the center. So you can obviously click into us, you can chat into us, you can call us, we can call you. And it's around making that experience work. It's around having the same experience for the travel counselor as for the customer, making sure that we've got a diversity of product across the world that suits all types of trips and all types of travel, which obviously the center of that, which is really your question, is the technology, the infrastructure, and the personalization engines that drive that solution for the customer and for the travel agent, and bringing it home.
Well, awesome. Good on you. Look at us. We're right on time, Audrey. It was great to have you here. Love our conversations. Thank you, everyone. And
thank you very much for the opportunity.